Vance followed Abdul Amari as he and his entourage made their way to the local coffee shop. They moved as a pack with Amari in the middle, flanked by his 4 burly bodyguards. They wore the traditional dress, the shalwar kameez, which covered any number of concealed weapons. The Afghan had shaved off the beard he'd sported in his home country, in an attempt to alter his appearance. He'd also cut his curly hair short and dispensed with the hat. A person of interest by the US government, he kept a low profile. Hence the move to the frontier district in Pakistan. Not low enough. Peshawar was close to the Afghan-Pakistani border and big enough for the drug lord to lose himself amongst the bustling streets, crowded marketplaces and teeming traffic. Recently, it had also been the site of bombings and other political turmoil. It seemed the more unruly a city, the easier it was for a person to disappear. Vance stepped back as a jiggling rickshaw sped past. He glanced around to make sure nobody had seen him, but everything appeared normal. The street was filled with men going about their daily business, bustling market sellers, taxis and rickshaws, and a few women with shopping bags, their heads covered by hijabs or scarves. His gaze fell on one such woman, with a dusky blue headscarf over her shalwar kameez. She carried a canvas bag and her long, dark hair hung over one shoulder, but unlike the other women who were engaged in conversation or going about their business with cast-down eyes, this one was alone and staring straight ahead at his target, Amari. Yeah, there was no mistake. Her eyes were clearly visible since the scarf didn't cover her face. She moved fluidly, casually, stopping to inspect the local produce, occasionally buying something and putting it in her shopping bag. But her attention wasn't diverted for long. Every few minutes she'd glance at Amari to make sure he was still there. At first, he thought her presence a coincidence. Perhaps she was going the same way. It was a busy market street after all. But 3 days in a row? No freaking way. She was watching Amari, same as him. His target proceeded into the cafe. The grimy glass windows covered in Arabic text obscured him from view. Vance crossed the street, spotting a tea house where he could sit and wait. Like the locals, Vance wore the traditional garb. His beard and dark tan made him blend in. In his village in the Afghan mountains, he'd been considered a local. The only thing that gave him away was his eyes. They were bright, piercing blue. Today, with the bright sun overhead, he could combat that by wearing sunglasses. He ordered a cup of tea, paid for it, and took a seat outside on the sidewalk. Beside him, 2 men played a game that resembled backgammon. He watched for a moment as they threw the dice and moved their pieces around the worn, well-used board. The woman seemed to have the same idea. She entered a shop beside the tea house and began browsing the multicolored array of shawls and scarves on display. She took her time, pausing to study each one, even trying on a few, admiring herself in the mirror beside the door. He could see her reflection. Behind her, the eager shopkeeper homed in, attentive now he could smell a sale. She chose a pretty copper one and bought it after a few minutes of haggling conversation, then put it on, replacing the dusky blue one. Clever, he thought. Changing her appearance under the pretense of wanting to wear her new purchase. Anyone who'd seen her go in might mistake her for someone else coming out. Not him. Now he kept an eye on her as well as his target in the coffee shop across the road. She moved on to the next shop on the other side of the tea house. Walking in front of him, she spared him only a cursory glance. With his glasses on and his head bent forwards over his cup of tea, she wouldn't have guessed he was anything other than a local. Studying her surreptitiously through his dark glasses, he noticed her skin was paler than he'd first thought. She wasn't local either, although she'd done a great job to make herself look the part. Her clothing was perfect, obviously purchased here, along with the scarf that she wore with ease. Her hair was a rich, chocolatey brown and hung in a straight shroud down her back. He'd seen it briefly when she'd changed scarves. Her lips were full and cherry-shaped with a natural pout like an old-fashioned cartoon character.